Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Ask Southern Belle. In the first episode, I answered some of the questions that were asked in the comment section of my previous videos. And then I invited everybody to ask me other questions about Southern life, Southern culture, Southern hospitality, as it would relate to my channel, and I offered to answer those questions. Well, sometimes life doesn't exactly work out the way you want it to. I was really expecting questions to be about the South and Southern life, Southern traditions, Southern culture, maybe even Southern foods. And instead, I just got questions about myself. Now, this one time, because I'm a new channel, because I understand that y'all have some natural curiosity about me, I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple of those questions just to be polite, just to show y'all that I'm an open book. But this isn't a vlog channel. This isn't a channel about me. It's not a channel about my life, because quite frankly, I don't have a life. Well, we all have a life, but I don't have an interesting life. I don't have a spouse. I don't have kids. My parents have passed away. It's just me. So therefore, I have my channel listed under how to rather than under vlogs, because I like to show people the items that I'm going to have at auction. I like to share fun word puzzles with y'all. I enjoyed the decorating videos, the cooking videos. Even my last video was taking a viewer suggestion of reading a children's book. So I enjoy the how-to rather than vlogging, but that's just me. But I am this one time going to answer a few of the questions y'all asked about me personally. But in the future, pretty please, I'm asking that when y'all watch this video, that all of the questions you put in the comment section are questions on topic, if you can, pretty please. And feel free to ask as many questions as you want to. I noticed that everybody was so polite and limited themselves to just one question, but that's not necessary. Ask 2, 3, 5, 10, 100. So, because I know that especially living in New Orleans, y'all have got to have plenty of questions. Because even if you don't necessarily have questions about the South, because maybe you also live in the South, or maybe you've already visited the South, New Orleans is a bit different. And also, here in New Orleans, in addition to the Southern culture, we also have the Cajun culture creeping over from the southwestern part of the state, as well as having some Creole culture. Now, I do not have ancestry in Cajun or Creole culture, but I am surrounded by it, and I'm glad to answer any of those questions. So, without further ado, laissez bon temps rouler. Let the good times roll, and we'll let it roll with our log of questions. The first question was asked by Tisme Laurie, 1395. Have you noticed now that we all have YouTube handles rather than YouTube names, that a lot of y'all have numbers at the end? What's with the numbers? Wait, why am I asking questions? I'm supposed to be answering questions. Okay, sorry. This is one of those times I should stop the video and completely restart it because I haven't learned to edit it. But I'm just going to say oops and keep going. So the question from Tisme Laurie 1395 was, what was your major in college? And I'm proud to say that I am a college graduate. I went all 4 years to Baylor University, which is located in Texas. It is the largest Southern Baptist university in the entire world. And boy, was it super hard. I received a Bachelor of Fine Arts, which is known as a BFA. And sometimes when people hear BFA, they think fine arts, that must be visual arts of some type, or maybe digital arts. And I can tell you, it was not digital arts because I am a tech dummy. And it wasn't visual arts because I'm hardly visual at all. Y'all probably don't know this, but I have terrible, terrible eyesight. And even if it weren't for my eyesight, I'm just not visually minded about things. So painting, sculpture, all of that, I can look at it and say, oh yeah, that's pretty. Or yeah, I bet somebody worked really hard on that. But it's not something I'm interested in doing or would ever spend my time doing. So therefore, none of the visual arts for me. I actually studied theater. And it's one of those things that I found when I was growing up in junior high, high school, and especially in church, helped me to get over some shyness in order to sing solos, in order to participate in plays and musicals. So I really, that gave me a whole new outlet for my personality when I was growing up. And when I was going to college, it wasn't one of those questions, is she going to go to college? Is she not going to go to college? I'd love to have one of those great stories like you hear all the time on the news and the internet where people say, I was the first person in my family to ever go to college. I have the opposite story. My parents went to college. That's where they met. My grandparents went to college. That's where they met. Even my great-grandfather went to both college and seminary. So everybody goes to college in my family. It's part of our family history and culture and legacy. So it was just a matter of where are you going to go and what are you going to study? And I was blessed that my parents said, apply wherever you want to apply. Study absolutely anything. It's not going to matter, sweetheart. Besides, you're going to meet Mr. Right for you. You're going to get married. You're going to have babies. You're going to live a long and happy life, just like we did, just like your grandparents did. And so that was my thought. My parents gave me the one piece of advice that regardless of what you study, little girl, you make sure that it is something you can finish in 4 years and that you're not going to be changing your major. So I thought long and hard about it, and I thought, what's going to be something that will still keep me interested and inspired and motivated and isn't going to get old and dull and boring? And that's when I thought, well, maybe something within the theatrical realm. At Baylor University, at the time that I went there, way back in the olden days of the last century, the tail end of the last century, but still, technically, it was the last century, there were only 3 majors. There was acting, directing, and design. Now, as soon as we got to the 2000s, the program changed and there was critique and criticism. There was theatrical management. There was musical theater. There was tons more majors. And if I could do it all again and could have gone at a later time, my major probably would have been different. But as it stands, with the degree I got, I chose a major of acting and a minor of directing. Thank you so much for that question, Tismy Laurie. Carolyn Collins, 4985, writes, do you dumpster dive? And the answer is yes or no, depending on how you define dumpster diving. If you mean dumpster diving by do I personally, with my entire body, dive into a dumpster? No. Does it mean, does any part of my body dive into a dumpster? Then yes. I will put on a glove and reach in to get boxes, to get bubble wrap, to get items that were thrown out by a store because they were discontinued, because they were from a holiday and the holiday sales are over and they couldn't sell it, so they threw it out. So I'm more than glad to do that. Also, I have something that's called a grabber, and I will dive the grabber in, which is hand operated, to get items as well. But being alone, I do not take the chance of personally diving in a dumpster, because when you are a single woman all alone, your safety is paramount and it's got to come first. Okay, the next question was by Carla, and I am so sorry, Carla, but I have no idea how to pronounce your last name. In future videos, if you want me to pronounce it, give me like a phonetical spelling. Otherwise, I'm just going to say my friend Carla, who is a regular viewer, by the way, And she says, what type of work did you do before taking care of your parents? Great question, because those of y'all who have known me know my whole story was after college. I did a little bit of a pivot career wise because I never thought I'd actually have to use the degree that I got. I thought that I'd find Mr. Right for me, get married, and have babies and live happily ever after. So I had to pivot a little bit with my career. And then I ended up leaving my career when my parents needed me to become their primary caregiver and come back to Louisiana, where even after they passed away, I have decided to remain here, partially with family loyalty. A lot of it is just the sentimental feel of being here. But the career that I had, since what are you going to do with a theatrical degree, is music. While I was at Baylor University, I was also a ministerial student. So already my part-time job was as a music minister, conducting music at local churches. Although I did have several internships as fulfillments of various classes I was taking. But when I wasn't contractually obligated to have an internship for one of my classes at school, I took paying gigs as music ministers. So once I had my degree, one of the things that is really great about Texas is there are so many churches, and churches are always needing more staff members, and they love to put on big Christmas musicals as well as Easter cantatas. So they aren't just interested in people who can conduct music, which I can conduct music, had a lot of music classes as well as internships in that area. So between having a theatrical degree, having tons of musical experience, and experience as a music minister, it was super easy to get a full-time job doing that. So that's what I did for all of those years that I remained in Texas. And of course, it kind of shows God's divine providence, because if for some reason I had been the hard-hearted person that said, no, I'm not going to leave my house and my job and my friends and my whole life to take care of my parents, I would have ended up having to leave the job anyway, because when the pandemic came around, obviously people were not congregating at churches, and people certainly weren't singing in choirs. And as a music minister, not only do you conduct the congregational music, especially when you don't have people congregating, but also you conduct the choirs for every age group. And so it becomes a non-necessity, and the first places that churches cut budgets, because you don't need choir directors for your children's choir, because there's not a children's choir, youth choir, there's not a youth choir, adult sanctuary choir, there's not a choir. All of the programs that music ministers were doing suddenly weren't needed. And of the few people who still felt safe to show up, usually some layperson would just stand and sing. They wouldn't even bother to conduct. So it was one of those things where the job would have ended anyway because of the world. So yet another reason that I am so glad that I followed God's divine leading, and that I'm glad that my parents finally humbled themselves, told me how really bad it was, and asked me to make the sacrifice of giving up my life, of coming back here to Louisiana and spending those years sitting by their bedsides, taking care of them, because it was years that I would not change for anything. Because I can rest assured knowing that I did everything I possibly could. And the life that my mother gave me as a stay-at-home mom for those 17 years until I graduated a little early from high school were repaid in the kindness of me taking care of her and my dad. So the last question is by Leslie Lucky Fine 6950. Shout out to Leslie. I do want to announce that I am going to be on Leslie's auction as a guest co-seller on December 20th, and I absolutely can't wait. Leslie is one of my role models as a fellow Southern lady, and she has so much verve and panache and sweetness and kindness, and she tells it like it is. And the sparkle of her hat pales in comparison to the sparkle of her soul. So Leslie asked this question: do you practice before each auction? How do you, and how long? And the answer is yes, I do practice. Now, I know that that probably isn't going to be popular because most other people are going to say, no, I don't practice. I just wing it. I'm so easygoing. But I will tell you what I learned in college, which, quite frankly, my parents paid good money for me to learn in college, which when I took speech classes, they said practice, practice, practice. Because the best way in being a well-spoken person, in giving great speeches, and also in getting over shyness, which is still a struggle that I have, is to practice. Think about what you're going to say. When you're giving a speech, actually write it down, but I don't write down anything from auction, and to practice in front of a mirror. So that's something that I absolutely do. But the way that I practice for auctions is in the preview video. Now, I don't know if y'all take the time to watch my preview video. I know y'all probably think it's a preview video just to entice, to lure, to tempt people into coming to the auction, or just to let them see if I'm offering anything they might want. And it is that, but it is also a practice video, because in making the video, it lets me practice several things. One, it lets me practice what I'm going to say. It lets me practice how I'm going to describe the item. But also, it lets me practice with the camera angle, because I have a situation where I have a table. Let me show it to y'all. And then I have a tray. Here, let me show you all the ugliness underneath. Okay? So I have this little TV table. You see, it's a little TV table. And then on top of it, I put this little tray. You see the handles? It's a little tray. And then I decided it was too flat. So then I put a box, which if I ever put anything heavy on top of it, it will cave in. I probably need to put something in the box, and that raises it up a little higher. And then for my camera, I have this little rolling cart, and I also have this little box, which it's not super high, but it boosts it up that much. So I can put it at this level, I can boost it up with a little orange box, or remember we have these levels down here? I can put it way down on this level. On this level, but on the orange box. Or for something really small, put it on top of the tray. So all of that goes into me figuring out the camera part, because rehearsing with the camera is just as much important, or maybe even more important, than rehearsing what am I going to say. Now, for those of you who may ask, how do you decide what you're going to say? Let me walk you through the process, since Leslie asked. And I don't know why I'm telling Leslie, because Leslie is one of the most well-spoken ladies I know in the auction industry. But just for other people watching who may be thinking about having an auction, starting an auction, or just wondering what my process is, let me grab something and show you. Oh, by the way, if anybody is interested in this lantern, my background decor is always for sale, and the information is always in the description. So this super cute lantern, which is new with tags, and it lights up, is available for, lights up with batteries. It's available for $12. Buy it now. So I'm going to scoot this over, and I'm going to show you how the rehearsal works. So I grab an item. Here's an item. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out, well, where can you put it? Can you put it up here? Yeah, but it looks far away. Do you put it down here? Yeah, but it won't really stand up. Well, it's kind of standing up, but I have a glare from the light. So then I have to work with the light. No, that glare isn't better. Okay, maybe I put the camera down here. So even though the videos look like they are only 20-30 minutes, the number of minutes that it takes me to finesse the item of the angle, of where to put it, of how to get the camera to capture it best, that takes time. And then the next thing is deciding what to say. See, I still don't like the way it is framed because I'm still cutting off words at the end. Anyway, is I go through the packaging and I let the packaging teach me things and I let the packaging tell me what to say. So, for instance, I'm going to sit here and read through the packaging. 3-pack, okay. Then you figure out, well, what are the 3? You keep reading, multi-pack with 2-way splitter plug. And of course, I'm already saying, well, what's a splitter plug? I mean, I can tell people that there's a 2-way splitter plug, but what in the world is a splitter plug? And why do they need one? And then I see here, oh, the 3-pack. Okay, it's a folding headphone, that's 1. Buds, that's 2. Ear hooks, that's 3. Okay, let's continue reading. Mobile, tablet, laptop, okay. Digital stereo sound. So a lot of my rehearsing is really more research than rehearsing. And then eventually I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to see that the back is so much clearer. It may not be shiny and fancy, but already I'm seeing that it has a noise reduction. So I'm going to for sure mention that. And then I'm going to show the back and I'm going to take them through the difference between the folding headphones, and I'm going to mention that it's folding. Then I'm going to mention the clip-on earbuds, and then I'm going to mention the stereo earbuds. And plus, I now see that some of this writing is sideways. So this is all part of my process. And then once I have read it and reread it, I will practice trying to read it or say it as I want to say it in the video once, maybe twice, and then I will finally hit the play button and I will explain this. Now, not everything is this complicated. If it's a lantern, I just tell it's pretty. But when it's something complicated that I don't understand, like something electronic, then it's going to be a lot more reading the package. Something else I learned in college that I really try to do during my videos, both in my preview videos and in my auction videos, is something that I learned in journalism class, which the first thing you learn on day 1 of journalism class is to answer the who, what, where, when, and how question. So when I'm live on an auction, sometimes you'll hear me telling a story, or sometimes you'll hear me creating a scenario, and it's because I followed that advice from my journalism class. So, like, for instance, looking at this lantern, who? Well, who would need a lantern? Anybody that needs light. When? When it's dark. How? I would show the on-off switch. I would talk about the battery. I would show this symbol about how it lights up. Why? And the why is usually the interesting part, where you take something that's happened in your life, if you have time to share it, about when a light or lantern helped you, or about how you wished you had one when you were tripping over something and maybe something fell and broke, or some sweet memory, or something you saw in some movie where a couple had their first kiss under a lantern. I mean, you can draw from anything in your life, and you don't necessarily always have time to tell a story, but I'm a person who likes to fill the time and the space. And when you're on an auction, it seems like there's a lot of time and space, because you say the amount of the starting bid and you say what it is, and then you wait and you wait and you wait, and you're just praying that you get a starting bid, and hopefully other bids too. But waiting for that first bid, it is like holding your breath. So therefore, when you have something to say, to talk about, a story to tell, which is hopefully both interesting and short, it can fill in that time while you're waiting for that first bid. So that's what I do, because I could sit there and be just boring and lame. I could sit there and just be nervous, 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 and silently praying that somebody somehow, for some reason, bids. Or I could use the time to my best advantage and also to calm myself and share more of myself with the audience by talking about the product or a memory or a use. And many times when you're doing that, people in the chat will also come up with uses for the product or share a story from their life. And I feel like that's more interactive, because even if the item doesn't sell, the world goes on. But if you've engaged your audience, then it helps to form an emotional bond with them. You might have made a friend, and somebody might remember it later. Because now and then, when an item doesn't sell, you can bring it back on another auction, or even the same auction, and just lower the price a little bit. So I hope that that answers Leslie's question, that demonstrated how I do it. And now it is everybody's turn in the chat to press the thumbs up for me answering all of these personal questions, even though the questions were supposed to be about the South, Southern life, Southern culture, and Southern hospitality. And go ahead and write me a few or a few dozen questions for the next Ask Southern Belle. And without further ado, I say laissez bon temps rouler. Let the good times roll. Roll in your life, roll in your heart, roll in your soul, roll on and on and on.